Welcome back to another episode of Custer and Wolfe. I'm RT.
And I'm Tyler.
And today we are talking about Colorado Watch Company and basically the Kickstarter campaign so far. As of right now, today, we have, I think, $308,000 raised of our $250,000 goal. So first, thank you. Thank you so much for backing us, for trusting us, for putting up with all of the marketing we've been doing about this new thing. We really appreciate your support. It's been a massive learning experience, and we're just really excited about the excitement that exists around Colorado Watch Company, the Field Watch, the GCT. Even just like when we got these hats and t-shirts that just showed up, like our team is, everyone's putting one on. And so super exciting to have a new thing, but even more exciting that, our customers like it. So
yeah, and we can't do what we love, and we can't do the things that we believe in without your support. So we are very deeply grateful.
And we get to keep doing this because of you. So thank you. Let's dive in specifically to like current state. Like here's, ever since we hit go on the Kickstarter campaign, really the 30 days leading up to that were just like, what we talked about in the last episode of Custer and Wolfe was just like massive. Like, okay, we got to get all this stuff done. We got to figure out prototypes for Kickstarter. We didn't have hands yet, so we were trying to navigate like what do we show on the campaign. We've had another 30 days or so of prototyping since we launched. We, just kept that up. And we've come pretty far. We got a lot of stuff in the works. First is just a few days ago, I guess like a week ago or so now, we received the new hands. And we put a couple sets of hands on these prototypes. And the Field Watch hands came out. They're supposed to be blued steel, like style, is what we're going for. And on the mock-ups that you see on Kickstarter, they're like a really great blue, but when we got them, they're just a little darker blue than we kind of saw in our heads, and it's awesome. So we're going to chalk this one up to what we call a happy accident of, sometimes you got to let the magic happen. That's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I love the hands. I think they came out, like you said, a little bit darker, but to me, I think it's perfect.
They really work with, like, they're very similar to true blued steel, like on my special edition military here. Like, the blued steel is a darker blue. It's like this blue, which, look at us. It just works out sometimes. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, and the combination of the white dial, the blued steel hands, and the red second hand, to me, just, it looks really good, really clean. And the darker blue, to me, is just slightly more subtle than maybe the hands you have on your watch. And I like that.
Yeah. One customer brought up a good point, which is like the darker blue. Are we still going to have enough contrast between the dark blue hands and the steel dials for the Field Watch? And it's a really good point. And we'll get into dials because you can see we have a ton of dial prototypes. We've been really messing around with that. And the new dials that we're working on are made from aluminum, which is a slightly lighter color. So having the darker hands, I think, is going to work even better for those metal dials on the Field Watch. So I think, again, happy accident there on Field Watch hands. And then the GCT hands came out exactly as we ordered them, exactly as designed. They don't match the dial perfectly because the paint on the dial, Kent here in the shop, just mixed paint and tried to get as close to that color as possible and did a really freaking good job, like really close, from just like eyeballing it. So for final production, the paint on the dial of the GCT will match the exact color of the hands, which is supposed to be vintage radium style.
Yeah. So it's an off-white when it's light outside, and then it glows a bright green that looks very similar to the glow of vintage radium.
Yep.
When it's dark outside.
It's awesome.
It's not radium, so the
Just
Lume...
for the record, it's not going to kill you.
So we're going to have...
radium style.
Yep, and we'll be pad printing Lume on both dials, the GCT and the Field. On the GCT, with a black dial, you have to lay a lighter color of ink before you put the luminescent material on top of it, because otherwise it just won't glow very brightly.
Yeah. Okay.
So to make that GCT dial, we'll pad print ink that matches the luminescent material, and then we'll pad print the lume straight on top of it.
Cool.
And because it's not radium, the way you charge up the luminescent material is just by sunlight, light. If you don't get the watch in the sun, it won't glow at night. That's one of the cool things about radium. Glows no matter what.
Yeah.
But to not get radiation poisoning, this is a pretty good option.
Yep. And it's what most modern watch companies use. And it is still glowing from the last time we had these out. So it's working great. And it looks really clean. So I'm really excited about the GCT hands. I think they're going to be absolutely perfect. And especially once the paint on the dial matches the hands, I think just a slightly lighter color is going to show up even better on the dial and is probably a little closer to the originals, which is, I think, spot on. So the other thing that happened, and we sent Kickstarter updates about it, but we got the newer Cordura straps, which it's sometimes a little bit hard to tell, but this is the Cordura strap, and this is the sample canvas that we got for the first set of prototypes. And the color on this one is just much richer. It's a deeper green. It's probably very hard to tell, but it's just a little bit thicker. The quality of that is much better. And so our Cordura straps are on these prototypes that I'm taking to New York tomorrow. And
Right.
the khaki is, I think, just the perfect color.
Yep, and the straps will actually have these rounded tips, unlike basically all of the pictures that we've shown so far. And Cordura, just for those that aren't aware, it's a synthetic canvas, and it was used by the military, and I believe it still is used by the military because it's, and I read this stat, and I can't qualify the stat, but they said it's roughly 6 times more durable than standard canvas.
Yep.
So that's one of the big reasons we used it. There's a local company here that uses Cordura to make bags, and
Yep.
I have one of their backpacks, and it's awesome quality.
Yeah. And so far, so good. I mean, the quality, we're really happy when we got those sample straps.
Yeah, and the colors are just a little bit richer than the canvas samples we had before, so really happy with the way they turned out.
Super cool.
And they all have these quick change spring bars on them, so it's really easy to change out different straps.
Yep. And let's talk, now that we're talking about straps, let's talk about the rubber. So we have been prototyping rubber straps. This is a 3D printed strap that we showed in one of our Kickstarter updates. Can you explain why it's so hard to make a rubber strap? Because it's one of those things, like we talked about some other parts later. It's just you thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be easier than it is.
Yeah, I don't know if hard is the right word for it. One of my favorite sayings is everything's easy when you know how to do it. It's just our first time making a rubber strap, and on the field watch, we're trying to make a fitted strap so that it completely closes the gap between the strap and the case where the spring bars are.
Yeah, it looks great.
And we're using flexible 3D printed plastic to prototype these straps, and that's not perfect. But in order to get the fit perfect so it doesn't bend like that, they're going to have to be injection molded.
Yep.
And we won't know how they fit until after we make a $10,000+ mold and receive the first molded samples. So we're trying to get it as close to perfect as possible with 3D printing before we invest in that mold. It's just taking a few iterations and a little bit of guesswork, and see how it comes out.
With a mold like that, you kind of only have one shot at it, because once the mold is made, if it's not perfect, you have to scrap it and make a new mold.
I must break you.
But the exciting thing is that mold company and the strap company is in Minnesota, and we know they can do it because they made straps for Shinola before, and we've seen those straps and they're awesome. And so it's really nice. Obviously, that's part of the reason we like making things here in the United States is we speak the same language as the supplier. We can go and visit them. We can talk it out. They've all been super helpful and just kind of okay, here's the design process. Here's why it's so important to do this, this, and this. And when we make that final mold, we'll have a strap for the field, a strap for the GCT, and then we can make new and different molds for new versions and variations of those rubber straps going forward. But that's the update on the rubber strap, which is just kind of a process, and we're going to keep iterating. And I don't know, what do you think? We need 3 or 4 more 3D printed ones before we feel
Yeah,
comfortable.
hopefully less than that. Yeah, and we were planning on also making a fitted strap for the military edition, the GCT.
Yeah.
And the fact that the crown is at 12 o'clock complicates things.
Yep.
We thought it would be really cool to mold the strap around the crown,
Right.
but in reality, it just makes that crown almost unusable.
Yeah.
So
You kind of need to be able to grab it like from above here in order to unscrew it.
So we'll have two different rubber straps. There'll be a rubber strap for the field watch, and that'll be fitted to the case like we've shown. And then the rubber strap, it'll still be a custom rubber strap for the GCT watch. It just
more like that,
will be
right?
more like this watch that I was wearing earlier.
Yep. So just a standard, it'll fit like the Cordura straps fit.
Like a normal strap.
Yeah. You just have simple, straight spring bar, put on there. And quick release on the rubber straps for all the watches, right?
Correct. And the plan is to make them out of natural rubber. We can't confirm that officially yet, but that's what we're trying to make them out of.
Yeah. So that's straps. We got, nice Cordura straps in. Those samples turned out great. We're still working on the rubber straps for all the watches. And they all come with rubber straps. And then you can buy an additional Cordura strap if you want to mix it up. We are getting close to our stretch goal of 350,000. And at that goal, then we would be able to give you a free additional Cordura strap with every order. I think this video will come out like maybe one day before the end of our Kickstarter campaign. So if you're watching this and we are still live on Kickstarter, tell your friends and let's try to get to that stretch goal. If it's after Kickstarter, then you'll be able to see what we did. And regardless, we'll have all of these options available going forward. And we have green, khaki, and black in Cordura. Lots of other things we could do, but those are the three that we're going to start with. And then rubber will be black. So those are straps. Let's talk dials. So GCT dial is fairly well complete. I mean, we have the matte black option, and then we have the machined black option. And these are coated. So this is the same DLC coating that's on the cases. Both really great options. We've had requests, to see what they look like in the different cases. So we'll have to, figure that out. But honestly, mixed reviews from some customers. Some customers are like, yep, they're all in on the machine. And some people are all in on the matte black. And same with our team. I mean, it's kind of 50-50. So I like this. I like the machined dial with the black case. Like, this is my watch. So I'm excited about that, especially with the khaki strap. The khaki color like really brings out the color in the dial, and it's amazing. So that's GCT. I think that's pretty well defined. But field, we got some constructive criticism and some feedback, mostly about the red around the logo. And so Tyler, you just started messing around with like some other ideas, right? And now we have a huge tray of other ideas. Yeah.
So that's probably the thing I've spent the most amount of time on since we launched the Kickstarter, is just iterating these dials and incorporating some of the feedback that we've gotten. A huge reason that we're here on Kickstarter is to get feedback, right, and to have an open line of communication between the people that are pre-ordering the watch and ourselves, based on some feedback and just, kind of experimenting with a few things. You can see here I've been making a bunch of different dials, experimenting with different textures, experimenting with different patterns, and ultimately we've arrived at two different dials. So we'll have two slightly different dials for the field watch that you can get in white or metal. The first one, which will look a lot like the current metal dial on the campaign, will have these smooth vertical stripes, and we'll have the red outline around the logo.
Yep. And you really can't, it's very hard to tell the difference probably from the camera's point of view, but when you see the metal dial that we had on Kickstarter and then this new variant, basically like when I move this watch, you can see the stripes. We called them Colorado stripes, just kind of for fun, like in the center of the dial. This one, you can see the stripes even without moving it, and when I move it, they're even more pronounced. So I love this. I think it's just a slight variation from this one that makes it even better. But then we had a few people say they just, for whatever reason, didn't like the red. And so you've been playing around with another option, right?
Yeah, so the quote-unquote new option that we haven't talked about yet and haven't listed on Kickstarter is this dial I'm holding right here. And the stripes, instead of just being smooth, they're textured with tool marks. So we make these dials on the 5-axis machine, and we actually tilted the tool on its side and kind of dragged the tool slowly across the stripe so you can see each time one of the flutes hit the metal.
Yeah.
It's a pretty pronounced texture, and you can see it after the dials are painted as well.
Yeah.
But the other difference between this dial and the other dial, the other field dial, is that there is no red outline around the logo.
Right.
It just says Colorado Watch Company.
So the logo pocket is there, but it doesn't. It's not like a box like this. It's just going to have the inside of the box. You know, you show me the mock-up, and I think it's really clean. I think if you like one, you'll love the other. Like if you love this, you know, I think that's just a slight variation, so it's not a huge difference. But for like the purists out there that want like really clean and simple, I think that's going to be the best bet. I still love this. I mean, we talked about it the other day. Like this logo almost looks like those vintage, you know, American signs that you think of, and I love it. You know, I think it works perfect on merchandise and everything that we're wearing, and I think it's cool on the dial. But having some more options for people to choose from is, I think, always going to be a good thing. And like you said, getting the feedback from people on Kickstarter is wonderful. So that's the dial. I mean, you've been making all the different like metal versions of the dial, like the base, but we really haven't dove into the pad printer yet. So what's the next step on the pad printing process?
Yeah, so we ordered this machine because we couldn't find anybody else to do the pad printing for us in the U.S.
Yep.
And we were just a little bit late in the game, so the machine had to be built in Switzerland and then shipped over here. So we didn't receive the machine till a week or two before launch, and we weren't able to get training on the machine before launch. So that's why the dials on our prototypes aren't perfect. We did our best with our manual pad printing machine, but we have now had our training on the Techaprint, and we are learning how to use it. So at this point, it's a lot of trial and error. We just have to do a bunch of tests, take notes, be really meticulous about what we do. Pad printing is not easy. It's really not easy. You can't fake it. That's why people love it,
Right.
the way it looks. But that's going to take quite a bit of our time to get perfect.
Yep. And that's not even like the thing where like you're also still trying to figure out how to make the dials white, right? Like this, figuring out how to paint just the white coating on it has been also a lot more difficult than we thought. Like this, was this powder coated? Because it's like,
That's spray painted.
got it. So like, you know, trying to get a nice even white coat is
Yeah, we've
so
tried
hard.
a few different things. I didn't think it was going to be difficult just to get the dials painted white, or just make them white. However that was going to be done. But so far we've tried powder coat, and then we were working through some airbrush enamel, and that's what the prototypes on Kickstarter, the white dials on Kickstarter, are airbrush enamel.
Yep.
But we're waiting on some prototypes with a new process, and it's called electrophoretic coating.
Whoa.
Or e-coat. It's really commonly used in the automotive industry.
I can see why they went with e-coat there.
Yeah.
Yep.
A little simpler.
Electrophoretic.
And what it is using electrically charged paint particles in a solution, so it's a liquid, and then you ground the dial and you dip it. So
Okay.
it's got like a perfectly even coating on the whole thing. It's
Yeah, that makes
between
sense.
10 and 25 microns, and it evenly coats the entire dial, which for our application here, we need a really thin, consistent coating.
Yeah, because you want to be able to see the little machine marks and stuff through it, but it also has to be thick enough that it's covering, you know,
Right.
and still showing up as white, not metal.
And that's been one of the biggest challenges, is that we have these raised features on the dial. Getting a powder coat or an airbrush to actually cover fully without building up too much thickness has just proven to be a bigger challenge than we thought.
Totally. It's hard to make a dial. That's what we're learning. This is probably why when we asked our suppliers and other people in the States if they could make us a dial, or they could at least pad print a dial for us. Pretty much everyone said no. So here we are doing it ourselves again. And it's a learning process, but that's one of the other reasons we liked Kickstarter is we got great feedback on the dials, and a lot of people seem to really resonate with, if it can be made here, it should. So
yep. And it just gives us, we just love having control over the entire process from beginning to end. Things don't always turn out perfect, but at least it's, we kind of live and die by our own, whatever you want to call it. But
yeah, being
able to make adjustments without having to order something from overseas or go through a third party, it doesn't hinder the creative process, and we're able to iterate and change and do things exactly how we want to. So.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, you told me about this idea for the new dial like 48 hours ago, and we're holding one, so that just going from this to that would take months and cost thousands of dollars if you're working with, even an Asian supplier. So, I think that's it's scary to think about how much it would cost to work with an American contractor to make even these small changes, and more, realistically, like what the minimum order would have to be to make stuff like this. So we'll be able to test and try and, learn, and then make really cool stuff as we go. So we talked dials, we talked pad printing, we talked about the straps and all the hands and all the other stuff. I think to wrap up kind of like current state, we took these watches to Hyde Park, a really high-end retail store here in Colorado, and in the like super bright lights of a retail store, I mean, it's kind of like these lights, it was a little hard to read the engraving on the back of the watch. And we were just talking about that, and so you messed around with the laser engraver a bunch on the new military edition that we're working on. And basically, would you figure out that like if you laser etch it and then sandblast it, now the back of the case looks almost more like the movement. It's kind of like that darker matte finish, and now it's like way easier to read the engraving.
Right. Yeah, we got this laser more than a year ago now. Mm-hmm. But we're still learning how to use it. It's very different from our original laser that we used to use to engrave the case backs. But one of the things that we've been trying to improve is just the clarity of the engraving itself.
Yep.
We know the laser is very capable of making really accurate marks, but dialing in the settings just takes time and patience. So I think last week I engraved all the military edition case backs.
Yep.
And just really sat down and spent some time playing with those settings and how we were going to finish it. And based on the feedback, especially at Hyde Park underneath the lights inside the store, the machined case back without being sandblasted is just too shiny. It's distracting, and you almost can't read the text. So now we're laser engraving it first and then sandblasting it after. And that combined with the new settings, I think, is really making that laser engraving pop.
Yeah, and you can tell just on these two, like this one has a sandblasted back, and this one has a shiny back, like fresh off the machine. And so I think the sandblasted case back, it matches the rotor on the movement, in my eyes at least. And I think it looks really nice. So again, one of those things that you just got to try it and play with it until you figure it out. And that's a really good example. So that's kind of like current state, what we've been working on for, the last few weeks, really. Very heavy into dials and just like refining the current product. Next up is pressure testing. So once we perfect some of these other things, and now that we have like fully built prototypes, we can test them on our different machines and play with different gaskets and everything like that to make sure we can hit our pressure testing goals. And what we're looking for there is on the field watch, we want to get to 50 meters of water resistance.
Yep, at least 50 meters.
At least 50, yep. And then on the GCT, we're hoping for at least 100. That's the goal. And the point there is like, under promise, over deliver. So we want to make sure that all the ones that we test get to at least that number. So whatever we, stamp on the front of it or on the back of it for you, whatever it says, if it says 50 meters or 100 meters, that you can feel confident that it is that level of water resistance. And that's really exciting. And really the biggest difference and the reason we can get from 50 to 100 and the difference there is the screw down crown on the GCT.
Yep.
Having that screw down crown gives us a lot of capability there. So,
yep. And I should have parts waiting for me on the DMU to hopefully finalize pressure on the field. So
yep.
That's something we're actively working on.
Yep. And part of that changeover process is you made all of these prototypes on the 5-axis machine.
Correct.
And now we're making all of the small round parts on the Swiss turning machine. And so Sky is basically like translating all of your code and everything into that machine's language, you know?
Yeah. So like you said, what are normally turned parts for the prototyping process, I made them on the 5-axis mill.
Right.
And for small turned parts for many reasons, it's better to make them on the lathe. The material spinning, it makes it more concentric. The surface finish is better. It can transfer the part to the sub spindle so it can work on both sides of the part.
This is what that machine was made to do.
Right. So it's not easy. So the 5-axis is almost harder to program, takes more time to run the part, but there's very little setup. On the Swiss lathe, there's lots of setup. So when you run a part, you want to run hundreds.
Right.
Whereas on the mill, I can easily run one, even though it takes longer. It's good for prototyping because we can really easily iterate, but we don't want to put the part on the Swiss until we're sure that it works because it takes so much time to set up.
Totally. That makes sense. And that's why we invested so much in that Swiss Turning Center and in Sky to learn how to use it.
Yep.
So that's awesome. After we do that kind of stuff, we keep working on the dials and pad printer and, you know, test those things. So we'll show you final-ish iterations of these new dial designs as soon as possible. And once we have all of those options together and ready for you, we'll send the Kickstarter survey. So if you backed us on Kickstarter, we're hoping 2 to 3 weeks after the campaign is over. So like, let's say mid to late November, we will send you that survey. And we'll keep you posted, obviously, but the survey will ask you, you know, which color of strap do you want for your extra strap? Which color dial? Do you want the metal dial in the field watch? Do you want the white dial in the field watch? Now we'll have several different dial options for you to choose from. You'll get a chance to choose if you want a steel case or the DLC black case. And then once you fill out that survey, we'll do all the accounting of if you paid for the black case or not. So we'll sort that out. And if you paid for a black case, but you see all the final options and you'd rather have a steel case, then just choose the steel case in your survey and we'll send you a partial refund for that extra money. Or you can get a couple extra straps, whatever works for you. And then obviously the flip side, if you're filling out the survey and you ordered our standard steel case, but you know, you see the black, you know, the all black look and you're like, yep, that's what I want. Just choose that on the survey and then we'll send you an invoice for the extra $100 that is. So that's really our next thing after Kickstarter's over is building out that survey, having nice pictures of all these things so you can make a educated decision on which one you want as your final product. After that, I mean, what's your idea of like how long we need to prototype? I think on the Kickstarter we said we'll be prototyping until January or February. Does that still feel realistic?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we want to beat the timeline if we can.
Yeah.
But I think it's realistic to, if things go well, to have prototypes done by end of January. Like sellable prototypes with all the options, everything figured out. We'll have a few things that are out of our control that we need to order. Hands are a good example.
Yep, the rubber straps, you know, the mold for that.
Rubber straps, making the mold, and then, you know, getting samples of that is going to take a while. Getting the flat crystals made, that's a few months. So as soon as the campaign ends and we know exactly how many watches we sold, we'll go through and look at all of the different parts that we need to make and the parts that we need to order and the lead times, and we'll start putting orders together and really organizing what we need to make and when we need to order it.
Yep. And, you know, for those unfamiliar about Kickstarter, basically we were raising this money, and right now we're at, I don't know, 308,000 or something like that. Those people that backed us on Kickstarter, their credit cards don't actually get charged until October 26th, the final day of Kickstarter. Obviously, it takes Kickstarter, I don't know, 5 to 7 days probably to like do all that accounting, do the transactions, and then send us the money. Our bank is going to throw up all kinds of red flags when they see that kind of deposit. So there'll be a hold on that money. So like, and then a lot of these big orders will require down payments. So that's one of the great things about Kickstarter is you raise the money up front with the pre-orders, so that we can make down payments on these significant orders and use the cash wisely. But that's also one of the negatives is we don't really have a lot of control over that whole process I just went through. It just kind of happens as it does. And some of those things add to the timeline, but hopefully they add days, not weeks or months. And that's prototyping. So hopefully we're having those sellable prototypes January, February. And then on the Kickstarter campaign, if you got a VIP option, then you'd be looking at getting one of those in March, or at least starting to ship in March. And then the early bird options, we say will start to ship in April. And so most people at this point are one of those early bird options. So you'll receive your watch, or you'll start receiving your watches in April, May. And that's our current timeline. But we're going to keep doing these videos every, 3-4 weeks. Our goal is at least once a month, and basically do what we just did and keep you posted. So if you have questions throughout, just put them underneath us here on YouTube. Ask away. You can also email us anytime. info@vorticwatches.com is the best email address for us, for Vortic and for Colorado Watch Company still. And, we'd love to be able to start next episode when we're doing this and we're talking about the last 30 days of what we've done, with just answering some questions that we've got in the meantime. So if a question came up during this episode about how something's made, what materials we're using for something, that kind of stuff, definitely put it underneath us here on YouTube. While you're there, hit that little subscribe button so you can see all of the future episodes that we create for Custer and Wolfe. Building a Watch Company is what what the show is called. And we're just here documenting what it's like building a watch company. I did get one random question about like whether I backed you on Kickstarter or not. How do I get a hat? So we'll figure that out. I don't know. We can probably put once Kickstarter's over, we can probably put all this merchandise on the website. Hats, t-shirts. As you can see, we got blue and gray shirts, and we got blue and camo hats. It's been really fun building watches, but also fun having a new brand to make some merchandise for. So we'll let you know. Maybe by next episode, we'll have something figured out for that if you want to support us by just grabbing a hat or a t-shirt. Otherwise, all the information about Colorado Watch Company is going to be at coloradowatches.com. And this was the Custer and Wolfe episode about Colorado Watch Company during our Kickstarter. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting us. Thanks for backing us on Kickstarter. We'll see you next time.